What if I told you that nearly 1,000 years ago, a king ordered a survey so detailed, so thorough, that it was nicknamed the Doomsday Book? Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But this is real history, and it changed England forever. This massive record, created in 1086, wasn't just a simple list. It was a complete inventory of England, every piece of land, every cow, every pig, and even every person. Think of it as the medieval version of Google Maps, but for taxes and power, and it was all thanks to one man, William the Conqueror. William wasn't just any king. He was a Norman duke who invaded England in 1066, won the Battle of Hastings, and completely transformed the country. But here's the thing. Conquering a kingdom is one thing. Holding on to it is another. That's where the Doomsday Book comes in. It wasn't just a record. It was a tool of control, a way for William to solidify his power and leave a legacy that would last centuries. So, who was William the Conqueror, and why did he go to such extreme lengths to create this book? Let's dive in. William the Conqueror wasn't born into royalty, at least not the kind you'd expect. He was the illegitimate son of Robert IV, Duke of Normandy, which earned him the nickname William the Bastard. But don't let that fool you. William was a fighter, a strategist, and a man with a vision. By the time he was in his 20s, he had already solidified his power in Normandy. But that wasn't enough for him. He had his eyes set on a bigger prize, England. The Battle of Hastings. In 1066, William got his chance. The English king, Edward the Confessor, died without a clear heir, and William claimed that Edward had promised him the throne. But there was a problem. Another man, Harold Godwinson, had already been crowned king. So, what did William do? He invaded. On October 14th, 1066, William's Norman forces clashed with Harold's English army at the Battle of Hastings. It was brutal, it was bloody, and by the end of the day, Harold was dead, and William was victorious. Impact on England. This wasn't just a battle. It was a turning point in history. William's victory at Hastings didn't just make him king. It changed England forever. He brought Norman culture, language, and governance to the country. The old Anglo-Saxon elite were replaced by Norman lords, and the English language itself started to evolve. But here's the thing. Conquering a kingdom is one thing. Keeping it under control is another, and that's where the Doomsday Book comes in. Speaking of the Doomsday Book, what exactly is it? And why did William go through the trouble of creating it? Let's find out. What is the Doomsday Book? So what exactly is the Doomsday Book? Imagine this. A massive, detailed survey of an entire country. Every town, every village, every piece of farmland, every animal, and even every person. That's the Doomsday Book, created in 1086, just 20 years after William the Conqueror took the throne. It was essentially a giant inventory of England. And when I say giant, I mean it. This thing was comprehensive. It recorded who owned what, how much it was worth, and even how much tax they owed. It was like the medieval version of a census, but on steroids. Why was it created? Now, why would William go through all this trouble? Well, think about it. He had just conquered England, but ruling it was a whole different challenge. The country was full of rebellious nobles, disorganized land ownership, and a population that wasn't exactly thrilled about their new Norman overlords. William needed a way to keep tabs on everything and everyone. The Doomsday Book was his solution. By recording every detail of his kingdom, he could tighten his grip on power, enforce taxes, and make sure no one was hiding anything from him. It was a tool of control, plain and simple. Here's a fun fact. The name Doomsday Book wasn't actually used back in William's time. It was called that later, and there's a reason why. The word doomsday refers to the day of judgment in Christianity, the day when everyone's deeds are recorded and judged. And just like that final judgment, the Doomsday Book was seen as the ultimate record. Once something was written in it, there was no arguing, no escaping it. It was final. Pretty intense, right? But how did William's officials even create something this massive in the 11th century? Let's break it down. The process of data collection. So how did William's officials pull off something as massive as the Doomsday Book? Well, it wasn't easy. William sent out teams of commissioners to every corner of England. These weren't just random guys. They were skilled administrators, scribes, and surveyors. They traveled from town to town, village to village, and even farm to farm, asking questions. Who owns this land? How many acres are there? How many plows? How many cows, pigs, or sheep? They even recorded how much the land was worth before and after the Norman Conquest. It was like a medieval audit, and no one was spared. The scale of the project. Now let's talk about the scale of this project. The Doomsday Book covered over 13,000 places in England. Yes, 13,000. It recorded details about more than 200,000 people and countless animals, farms, and resources. And here's the kicker. They did all of this by hand. No computers, no calculators, not even typewriters. Just quills, ink, and parchment. The level of detail is mind-blowing. For example, if you owned a piece of land, the book didn't just say, John owns 10 acres. It said, John owns 10 acres, with 2 plows, 3 cows, and 1 pig, and it's worth 20 shillings. They didn't miss a thing. Impressive for its time. Think about how impressive this was for the 11th century. This wasn't just a survey. It was a monumental feat of organization and administration. Nothing like it had ever been done before. In fact, it wouldn't be matched in scale or detail for centuries. It was the medieval equivalent of a modern-day census, but with way less technology and way more effort. And the crazy part, they finished most of it in just 1 year. That's right, 1 year to document an entire kingdom. Talk about efficiency. Okay, so we know how it was made, but what exactly did they write in it? What kind of information did the Doomsday Book contain? Let's take a closer look. The kind of information it recorded. So what kind of information did the Doomsday Book actually contain? Well, pretty much everything. It was like a snapshot of 11th century England. It recorded who owned what land, how much land they had, and what it was used for, whether it was farmland, forests, or pastures. It also listed livestock, cows, pigs, sheep, you name it. And it didn't stop there. It even recorded the number of people living on the land, from wealthy landowners to peasants. Basically, if it had value, it was in the book. Resources like mills, fish ponds, and even beehives were documented. Nothing was too small or too insignificant. How it strengthened William's power. Now, why was all this information so important to William? Simple. Knowledge is power. By knowing exactly who owned what and how much it was worth, William could enforce taxes more effectively. If someone tried to hide their wealth or avoid paying, the Doomsday Book exposed them. It also helped him reward his loyal Norman followers by redistributing land taken from the Anglo-Saxon nobility. In short, the Doomsday Book wasn't just a record. It was a tool for control. It centralized power in William's hands and made sure everyone knew who was in charge. Anecdote: Surprising entries. Here's something fun. The Doomsday Book is full of surprising and sometimes bizarre entries. For example, in one town, they recorded that a woman named Elfgiafu owned land as long as she remained unmarried. In another, they noted that a man named Bricteric had to pay taxes on his land, but only if he could prove he wasn't a slave. There's even a record of a town that had to pay taxes in eels. Yes, eels, over 60,000 of them. It's these little details that make the Doomsday Book so fascinating. It's not just a dry list of numbers. It's a window into the lives of people who lived nearly 1,000 years ago. All of this raises a bigger question. What was William the Conqueror's ultimate legacy? How did the Doomsday Book shape England's future? Let's dive into that next. How the Doomsday Book shaped England's future. The Doomsday Book didn't just help William control his kingdom. It laid the foundation for modern England. For the first time, there was a centralized record of land ownership, resources, and wealth. This made it easier for future kings to govern, tax, and manage the country. It also set a precedent for detailed record-keeping, something that would become a cornerstone of English administration. In many ways, the Doomsday Book was the start of a more organized, bureaucratic state. It wasn't just a book. It was the beginning of a system that would shape England for centuries to come. William's impact on English culture, language, and governance. But William's legacy goes far beyond the Doomsday Book. His conquest changed England in ways that are still felt today. For starters, he brought Norman culture to England, blending it with Anglo-Saxon traditions to create something entirely new. He also transformed the English language. Old English, the language of the Anglo-Saxons, mixed with Norman French to create Middle English, the language of Chaucer, and eventually Shakespeare. And let's not forget governance. William introduced the feudal system, a hierarchy of lords and vassals that defined medieval society. Even the castles he built, like the Tower of London, became symbols of Norman power and influence. Why the Doomsday Book is still important today. So, why does the Doomsday Book still matter today? Well, for one, it's an invaluable historical document. It gives us a detailed look at life in 11th century England, what people owned, how they lived, and even how much they paid in taxes. Historians, genealogists, and even archaeologists still use it to study the past. But more than that, it's a reminder of how far we've come. The Doomsday Book was one of the first attempts to systematically record and organize information on a massive scale. In a way, it's the ancestor of everything from modern censuses to big data. It's proof that even 1,000 years ago, people understood the power of information. So, what can we take away from all of this? The Doomsday Book wasn't just a medieval record. It was a game changer. And William the Conqueror, he wasn't just a king. He was a visionary who left a legacy that still shapes our world today. So let's recap. The Doomsday Book wasn't just a medieval record. It was a revolutionary tool that changed how England was governed. It gave William the Conqueror unprecedented control over his kingdom and laid the groundwork for modern administration. And William himself, he wasn't just a conqueror. He was a transformative figure who reshaped English culture, language, and society in ways that still echo today. Together, the Doomsday Book and William's legacy remind us that even 1,000 years ago, people understood the power of information and organization. Here's a question to think about. If William hadn't created the Doomsday Book, would England have become the powerful, centralized kingdom it did? Or would history have taken a completely different turn? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your theories. Now, if you're curious about more stories like this, don't forget to check out my previous videos. Did you miss the one about the Viking invasions that set the stage for William's conquest? Or the deep dive into the Battle of Hastings? Trust me, you don't want to miss those. And here's some exciting news. This is the final episode of Season 2. But don't worry, Season 3 is coming soon, and it's packed with even more incredible stories from history. From ancient empires to forgotten legends, we're going to explore it all. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone who loves history. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow. Let's keep uncovering the fascinating stories of our past together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Season 3.